January 1944. Deep in the Norwegian mountains, a valley covered in the silence of snow. Everything was white, but beneath this whiteness there was an invisible movement. The Germans had already taken complete control of the country. But this time their goal was different, neither weapons nor fuel. They were building a secret tunnel system under the mountains. The official reason was a logistics route, but in reality, this tunnel was a secret line connecting uranium and heavy water reservoirs hidden in Norway to Germany. This was a secret plan that few knew about. But for the Norwegian resistance movement, the slightest rumor was like such a light. In a cell code named Eldor near Oslo, a group of 3 people gathered at midnight. Erik Midtskog, an engineer, a genius who had studied German technology. Lars Hauge, a former mountain guide, now a partisan fighter. Ingrid Halvorsen, a radio operator, the only woman engaged in breaking German codes member. Erik put a yellowed map on the table. "There's something here," he said, pointing to the Hardanger Plateau with his finger. "Why would the Germans dig a tunnel there? In the middle of winter?" Lars asked. Ingrid answered calmly, "Because no one will look there. That's what they're counting on." That night, the decision was made. The group would go to Hardanger. Their goal was simple, to find the first traces of the tunnel's existence. But this trip was not just a search. The German Army Special Unit Edelweiss was also in the area. And their mission was just as simple. No one should know anything about this tunnel. Before leaving, Ingrid radioed a coded message to London. "There is a breath in the silence under the fjord. If we don't turn around, the mountains will speak." In the middle of a snowy night, 3 men walked silently along an old train track. The air was 30 degrees below zero. Even their breath turned to ice. But the fire inside them was colder, determination mixed with fear. Halfway through the journey, Erik stopped. Something glittered under the snow. He bent down and began to dig. He found a metal plate. On it was written in German, Projekt Nebelfahrt, Project Foggy Path. This was the first evidence, but at the same time, the beginning of a danger. Lars raised his head and looked into the darkness. A sound was heard under the snow. A short, mechanical click. Then silence. "Mines," Erik said quietly. "They are guarding this place." From that moment on, there was no turning back. This was no ordinary mission. They had already stepped into the heart of the Germans' most secret plan. The tunnel was still invisible, but its breath could be felt, like a strange, suffocating heat coming from under the ground. Towards morning, the trio took refuge in an old hunting lodge at the foot of the mountain. Ingrid silently listened to the signals coming from the radio. Suddenly, in the sound, she heard a piece of code, the Germans' internal communication. The sentence was clear. "There may be a danger. Change the entrance to the tunnel." Code Schnee 42. When Erik heard this code, his lips trembled. So the tunnel does not have a single entrance? It was the first time Ingrid and Lars saw fear in his eyes. At that moment, they understood. This mission was not just against the Germans, but a race against time. And deep in the Hardanger Mountains, hidden under the snow, the misty road awaited them. The morning sun hadn't even risen in the Hardanger Mountains, only a gray light, cold shadows shivering on the snow. Erik, Lars, and Ingrid had been walking in silence for 4 hours. The snowy forest path was almost non-existent, but Lars knew this place well. He had once been a hunter here. "There was an old mine over there," Lars said, reaching out to a distant rock. "If there is a tunnel, the entrance will be there." Erik shook his head. His gaze wandered around. There might be a trap in every tree, every shadow. The Germans left no room for contingencies in such secret projects. When they reached the rock, an iron surface gleamed beneath the snow. Ingrid knelt down, cleared the snow, and saw the edge of an old door. In the middle of the door was a strange symbol, the letter N curled between the talons of an eagle. "I've seen this symbol before," Erik whispered. "This is the insignia of the Edelweiss unit." Lars took a deep breath. "So, there are not just soldiers on the other side of this door. There is a special security unit," he said. Ingrid took a small compass and a magnetic detector from her pocket. She saw that the signals on the door had changed. "The door is electrically connected. If we force it open, it will give a signal." There was a moment of silence. All three looked at each other. What were they supposed to do? There was no going back, but going forward would mean death. Eric took a step back and thought deeply. Then he took a small screwdriver from his pocket. Look here. The electric current is flowing through the panel on this side. If we change the position of the wire, the system will short circuit. It will only take us 10 seconds. Lars nodded. 10 seconds will be enough. Eric knelt down and opened the edge of the door. His fingers were trembling, but there was a precision in every movement. Ingrid counted the time. 5, 4, 3. A faint creaking sound came from the door. Then, click. The door opened very slowly. From inside came thick air, the smell of rust, and the distant sound of a motor. The tunnel seemed very deep where it began, as if it led into the heart of the mountain. Eric turned on his flashlight. On the dark walls, electrical wires, metal poles, and writings in German were visible. Schaft B, Zugang streng verboten. Shaft B, entry strictly prohibited. They slowly entered. The sound of footsteps echoed off the walls. Ingrid's heart was pounding. Suddenly, a light flashed in the distance at the end of the tunnel. "Someone is there," he said in a low voice. Lars immediately turned off the flashlight. The trio hid their breath in the darkness. The footsteps were getting closer. A harsh voice in German was heard. "Kontrolle abgeschlossen. Entry is secure. Gate 3 code, Schnee 44. Ingrid's heart stopped as if she had heard the same code on the radio. So they had indeed found the entrance to the main tunnel. After the German soldiers had moved away, Eric whispered, "We are now in the center of everything. This tunnel is not just a passage. It is like a secret vein opened for the future of Germany." Ingrid and Lars fell silent. Something hummed in the depths of the darkness, as if an engine was working underground. Eric turned on the flashlight again and saw a strange map on the wall. The map showed a line starting from the west coast of Norway and extending to the German city of Kiel. "That's impossible," Eric said quietly. "This must be the Atlantic Tunnel Project." He approached the map. But at that moment, a drop of water fell from the ceiling. No, it wasn't water. It was blood. Lars looked up and whispered, "We are not alone here." A drop of blood dripped from the ceiling of the tunnel and left a small red mark on the snow. The silence was so heavy that even Ingrid's breathing echoed off the walls. Lars raised his flashlight. Something was caught in the cracks of the ceiling. A piece of fabric, black fabric. Eric slowly approached, pulled the fabric, and something fell heavily to the ground. The silence of the tunnel shattered. A body had hit the floor. It was a German officer. Fear was frozen on his face, his eyes still open. On his chest was a short message written in red ink. "No one will escape the fog." Ingrid stepped back, trembling. "Who did this?" Lars replied calmly, "This isn't the work of the partisans. This is the Germans' own doing. They silence their own to keep secrets." Eric turned the body over. In the officer's hand was a document sealed with red wax. He pulled it out, brushed off the dust. The paper read, "Project Nebelfad, Phase 3. The Norwegian mountain passage is ready. Energy division near activation." Eric took a deep breath. Energy division. So this isn't just transportation. They're testing some kind of energy here. Ingrid looked up. "You mean a weapon test?" Eric answered slowly. "No, something even more dangerous. It's likely connected to the atomic project." A low hum echoed from deep within the tunnel. A faint blue light began to grow in the distance. Lars whispered, "They're coming. Hide." The trio crouched behind a metal barrel. 3 German soldiers entered, one of them reading something from a tablet. "Commander Frey will arrive today. Security must be doubled. The passage test will take place tonight." The words froze in the air. The name Commander Frey struck Ingrid like a nail to the brain. She had heard that name once on the radio, one of the heads of Berlin's nuclear energy project. Eric swallowed hard. If Frey is coming here, then this place is far more important than we thought. After the soldiers left, Ingrid began following a cable line running along the wall. It led to a large iron door on the right side of the tunnel. Above it was written, "Stromabteilung, Energy Division." Lars listened closely. A rhythmic sound came from inside, like a heartbeat. Eric examined the lock. It was an old electronic system. He took out a small tool and began connecting wires. With a faint crackle, the door unlocked. They stepped inside. In the dark hall stood a massive machine, metal tubes spiraling around it, and at its center, a glowing blue sphere. With each pulse, the air grew warmer. "What is this?" Ingrid whispered. Eric froze. This isn't an energy experiment. It's a teleportation or long-distance transmission prototype. If it works, the Germans could transport anything across continents in seconds. Suddenly, the blue sphere began to spin rapidly. The walls trembled. Ingrid backed away in fear. "Eric, that sound is getting louder." Lars ran to the door. "We have to get out of here now." But it was too late. The sphere was about to explode. Eric jumped to the control panel and cut the wires. For a few seconds, everything went dark. Then it stopped. The tunnel fell silent again. But the air carried a strange smell, burnt metal mixed with something unfamiliar. Eric held his breath and said, "We stopped one experiment, but now they'll know someone's been here." At that moment, Ingrid's radio hissed. Amid broken signals, a harsh voice came through. "All units alert. The tunnel has been breached. Seal entrances 1 and 2. No one must survive." Lars turned off the flashlight. His eyes glimmered coldly. "There's only one way left," he said. "Through the mountain, to the other side." Eric nodded silently. "Or we die there." They stepped into the darkness. The end of the tunnel would either lead them to freedom or to the end of the fog path. The tunnel was no longer silent. The metallic rumble rising from beneath the ground now beat like the pulse of a living heart. Ingrid's radio had gone completely dead. The doors were sealed and sirens echoed through every corridor. The Germans already knew someone had broken into their secret base. Eric, Lars, and Ingrid crawled forward through a narrow side passage of the tunnel. The air was thick, heavy, and reeking of rust. Even breathing was hard. With every move, it felt as if the mountain itself was pressing down on them. "We need to get out before Frey arrives," Eric said. "If he gets here, he'll blow every entrance to this tunnel." Lars replied quietly, "Maybe he's already on his way." At that moment, a distant engine roared, the metallic clatter of treads scraping against stone, followed by sharp commands. Ingrid whispered, "Tankettes, they're bringing in heavy equipment." Eric pressed his hand against the wall. Behind the metal surface, he could feel the faint hum of pipes. Suddenly, he noticed a small hatch. The label read in German, "Luftabzug," only in emergencies. "It's an air duct," Eric said. "It could lead us to the other side of the mountain." Lars nodded. "If it does. But we don't know what's inside." Ingrid closed her eyes. "Staying here means death." Eric pulled open the hatch. A gust of cold air rushed out. The narrow shaft spiraled upward into the darkness. One by one, they climbed inside. As they ascended, Ingrid suddenly froze. A faint voice echoed through the metal pipe, calm but chillingly clear in German. "Ich bin frei. The test begins at midnight. If anyone is inside, the mountain will swallow them." Ingrid's breath caught. Commandant Frey was already in the tunnel. The duct led them into a cramped stone chamber. The damp walls glistened, and broken electrical wires hung from the ceiling. On the floor were dark, dried stains. Blood. Lars crouched. Someone had tried to crawl out of there, but hadn't made it. Eric turned on his flashlight. A metallic door gleamed in the darkness. In the center was a glass window, and inside a desk bearing an insignia, Reichsprojektabteilung Mine. "This must be the command room," Eric said. Lars drew his pistol. "Maybe Frey's in there." Eric opened the door. The room was empty, but on the desk lay several documents, a photograph, and a half-finished pack of cigarettes. The photo showed Frey, several German officers, and the strange device, the glowing blue sphere. Ingrid began gathering the papers when a sound came from under the desk, a faint metallic scrape. She jumped back. From the darkness, a man crawled out, covered in soot and trembling. His eyes were blank, but he was still alive. A German technician. "Bitte, help me," he gasped weakly. Frey is insane. He's going to detonate the device. Everything. Eric grabbed him. What do you mean? The man's lips quivered. The tunnel, it's not just a passage, it's an energy conduit. If it activates, the entire Hardinger Valley will collapse underground. His head fell to the side. He was dead. Lars clenched his jaw. Frey isn't running a test, he's setting off a destruction sequence. Eric scanned the documents. A code was written in the corner of one blueprint. Frey sequence 1200. He's going to start the system at midnight, Eric said. We've got 5 hours. Suddenly, explosions thundered from deep within the tunnel. The walls trembled, dust raining from above. Ingrid grabbed the radio. Only static. Then a broken transmission crackled through. Elder Base, signal weak, find an exit, Frey is tracking you. The voice faded. Eric looked up. That means he's already watching us, Lars said quietly. Yes, and he's in this tunnel right now. From the depths came the sound of heavy footsteps, metal striking metal. With every step, the air grew colder. Ingrid whispered, Eric, what's the plan? Eric drew his pistol, his eyes fixed on the darkness. The plan? To turn his own plan against him. Then a sudden flash cut through the shadows. Frey's flashlight. His voice came, cold and calm. Norwegians, I've been expecting you. A cold voice echoed through the tunnel. Commandant Frey had arrived. From the darkness, a beam of light revealed a tall German officer, his uniform spotless, his expression calm, a face carved from control, not fear. I didn't have to come looking for you, Frey said, his English edged with a German accent. You came to me. Eric stayed silent, his gaze fixed on the folder in Frey's hand, marked with a red seal. Inside were the full plans of Project Nablfod, the tunnel's true secret. Frey turned his flashlight toward Lars. Norwegian resistance fighters. Heroes, yes. You'll vanish here like shadows. Ingrid stepped forward. What is this project? Why dig through all these mountains? Frey hesitated, then moved closer, his voice almost reverent. Because, Miss Halvorsen, this war is no longer lost. It's evolving. This tunnel isn't a passage. It's a gateway to a new age. He pulled out a small metal device. Numbers glowed. 11, 17. At midnight, this mountain will transform. From it, a power greater than the atom will rise. You call it the fog path. I call it progress. Eric's voice hardened. Your progress will destroy millions. Frey smiled faintly. Every breakthrough demands a price, Mr. Mitskog. Surely an engineer like you understands. Distant explosions rumbled. Lars muttered, They're sealing the exits. Frey nodded. No one leaves. You're part of the transformation now. He pressed a button. The ground shook. Blue light pulsed through the tunnel walls, searing the stone. Ingrid cried out, Eric, stop it! Eric dropped to his knees, inspecting the control panel. The system was far beyond simple circuits. It was tied to the reactor deep inside the mountain. It can't be shut down from here, Frey smirked. Correct? Only one code can stop it. He tapped his chest. My heartbeat. Ingrid's eyes widened. You linked it to your pulse? Frey nodded. As long as I live, the system endures. For a moment, no one moved. Then Lars whispered, Then you're the key. Frey drew his pistol and fired. The shot sparked off steel. Eric pulled Ingrid down as debris fell. Smoke filled the air. Lars moved around and returned fire. Frey staggered, gripping his arm. You don't understand, he shouted. This is beyond life. He hit the switch again. The blue light surged, brighter, wilder. The tunnel trembled as energy filled every corner. Ingrid shouted, If it escapes, the whole valley will collapse. Eric pulled a small explosive from his pack. We can overload the conduit. That's our only chance. Ingrid's voice shook. You won't make it out. Eric looked at her softly. Some things are worth more than survival. He ran toward the reactor chamber. Lars kept Frey pinned with fire. Frey stumbled, shouting as Eric armed the charge. The timer blinked. 11:59. Frey yelled, "Stop! You'll destroy everything!" Eric answered, "That's the point." The blast came like a sunrise. The tunnel vanished in a wave of light and thunder. Silence followed. Then the sound of the wind through the mountains. At midnight, a single roar rolled across Hardinger. A day later, a coded message reached London. The fog has lifted. The tunnel is gone. But freedom stands. Unsigned, yet everyone knew who sent it. Eric Mitskog. Eric studied the map under the dim beam of his flashlight. The entrance should be right here, he said, pointing to a narrow valley on the southern slope of the mountain. Voss nodded quietly. If the map is correct, he murmured, but didn't finish the sentence. Both men knew that in these mountains, too many things no longer fit onto any map. The tunnel entrance was guarded by a small steel door. But the most frightening thing wasn't the door. It was the silence surrounding it. German patrols had recently increased their night movements in this area, and the resistance knew they had only one chance to get in, before dawn. Helga was setting up a hidden radio transmitter at the mountain's base. Her hands trembled from the cold, but her voice was steady. If we can get inside tonight, the whole course of the operation will change. The Germans will have to reveal what they're hiding. Without lifting his head, Eric replied, "If they don't find us first, yes." They moved forward in silence. The lock mechanism on the door was complex, but Lars's years of experience as a mechanic had prepared him for this moment. With a few seconds of focus and the faint scrape of metal, the door clicked open. A wave of warm steam hit their faces. A mechanical hum came from deep within, like the heartbeat of the mountain itself. As they entered, the air shifted. When the door closed behind them, only the sound of footsteps remained. The walls were lined with pipes and cables. It felt less like a tunnel and more like the inside of a laboratory. After a few minutes, they stopped in front of a room. A faint blue light glowed from within. Helga whispered, "This must be the power core. If the tunnel draws energy from here, there's something massive inside." Eric slowly pushed the door open. Inside, the place looked abandoned. The German engineers were long gone, but scattered across a table were open documents. Eric picked one up and read carefully. It was written in German. Project Schwarzer Weg, Norway, 1943. Project Black Path, Norway, 1943. Voss took a deep breath. So this isn't just a transport tunnel, it's a military passage. Eric slipped the document into his bag. But at that exact moment, a sound echoed from deep within the tunnel. Something heavy was moving along metal rails. The Germans had returned. "Turn off the lights," Eric whispered. The team held their breath. The noise grew louder, the engine of an armored vehicle. If they were discovered now, the entire resistance plan would collapse. They hid in a narrow gap along the tunnel wall. As the sound drew near, Voss could hear his own heartbeat pounding. One German soldier stopped and looked around. His flashlight beam swept dangerously close to the wall where they hid. For a single second, no one breathed. Then the soldier turned back. As the engine noise faded into the distance, Helga whispered, "We won't get another chance like this." Eric replied quietly, "No, but now we know what's buried in these mountains. All that's left is to get the documents out." From deep inside the tunnel came the rhythmic hum of an engine, the pulse of a hidden power. The German secret was now in their hands, but escaping the mountain would be far harder than entering it. The air inside the tunnel had grown heavier. Even though silence returned after the German transport vehicle moved away, everyone knew it wouldn't last long. Eric tightly packed the documents into his bag and said quietly, "We have to get out now, but not the same way we came." Voss looked up. "Is there a back exit?" Eric's eyes locked on the map. "Yes, but it runs along the water pipes. If we go that way, we'll have no more than 15 minutes. Helga moved closer to the door and listened carefully. From deep within the tunnel came the sound of footsteps. A German patrol was already on the move. They were no longer alone inside the mountain. The resistance team moved quickly. As they passed beside the metal pipes, the tunnel seemed to breathe like a living thing. Hot steam, humidity, and distant alarm echoes made it hard even to breathe. Suddenly Lars stopped. "Listen," he whispered. The metallic clang from above confirmed their fear. The Germans were sealing the main entrance. "We're trapped," Helga whispered. Eric turned around. His eyes were calm but determined. "No. If we reach the exit hatch, those who come after us will still have a way through." They pressed forward through the darkness. The sound of rushing water through the pipes reminded them of time slipping away. Finally, they spotted a small metal ladder leading upward, a narrow shaft that opened to the mountain's surface. But part of the ladder was broken. Voss climbed first, with Helga following. Eric went last. Just then, gunfire echoed behind them. The German patrol had found them. Eric pulled out his weapon and fired back. Bullets ricocheted off of steel walls, sparks flying. Lars pushed Helga upward. "Climb! Go, now!" he shouted. A second later, the tunnel shook, a grenade explosion. Dust and debris filled the air. As Helga reached the upper section of the ladder, she looked back. A section of broken metal had fallen onto Lars's legs. He was trapped. "Lars!" Helga screamed, but Eric grabbed her arm firmly. "He's saving us. Go!" Lars's face softened into a strange, peaceful smile. He pulled an explosive charge from his bag, looked at Eric, and said, "They'll never use this tunnel again." Eric nodded. "Thank you, my friend." Moments later, they climbed to the surface. A few seconds after that, a thunderous explosion echoed from deep within the mountain. Black smoke filled the air. The screams of German soldiers, the tearing of steel, and then silence. When Helga, Voss, and Eric finally reached the surface, the first light of dawn was breaking. Behind them, only a crater remained, black smoke rising from where the tunnel once was. Lars had vanished with the mountain. Helga's voice trembled as she whispered, "He stayed behind, for us." Eric replied quietly, "No, he stayed for Norway." They looked out over the Rjukan valley. A calm wind blew through the morning air. This time, the silence was not fear. It was freedom. Eric opened his bag and took out the documents. On the cover were the words, "Project Schwarzer Weg, Direct Energy Connection to Berlin." Voss took a deep breath. So it was connected to the atomic project. Eric nodded slowly. Yes. If it weren't for Lars, a dark path would have emerged from this mountain, one that might have swallowed the whole world. Subscribe for more.